Hi! This video continues my videos showing how I develop a small game. Right now we're seeing me just running through what I had and picking up from the end of the last video. It's sped up, the game isn't actually this fast. As you see, you can collect a weapon, you get a number of attacks with it before you drop it again. There are enemies chasing you around. And when you fall off the screen, you just have to pause the game because there's no life system yet. And the next thing I do is take the code that originally spawned the player just at load time and separate out a function called spawn player. I'm also giving the player an invuln frames property, which I will be using to keep the player from getting re-hit immediately after spawning. So every frame, if the player has any invuln frames, they decrease, and the code that triggers the enemy hitting the player only goes off if you have invuln frames. And then I'm making this code where I'm comparing invuln frames mod 12 to 6, so every 12 frames is an on-off blink cycle while you're invulnerable. Then I am going to set up the lives. So I'm giving the player lives and score, and those need to be permanent instead of only happening at spawn time. So the spawn player code, instead of saying player equals a new object, I'm changing that so I'm updating some fields of the player, intentionally leaving score and lives out of the list of fields that are getting updated. After that change is made, I then make it so if you have lives left and you're off the bottom of the screen, you respawn. Boop. But I forgot to put player.damaged in the list of attributes that get reset on spawn, so you fall off the screen and it still thinks you're falling off the screen, you just keep dying. So I fixed that, and then I'm just fiddling with the game a little for fun, and to see what happens when I die unexpectedly, and yes, I respawn. Next thing I'm doing is making it so I can't attack during my death period while I'm falling off the screen. And I adjust the platform placements a little because it seemed deceptive that I couldn't reach the top middle platform from the one to its left. So I just lowered that platform to make it match expectations better. And there I am, just running away from things more. Just testing it out. Testing out attacks. Grabbing the thing. Dying. And at this point I realize I'm getting swarmed a bit too much. Making it so I can attack faster. My attack cycle took 30 frames, now it takes 20 frames, of which 15 are still the power when the attack is actually active. And that's letting me defend myself a little more effectively because I'm not locked in place for as long each time I attack. After I get hit, the enemies are still chasing me, so it can be this annoying loop of repeatedly trying to get past the same enemies over and over. Now I'm moving a platform up on the left because that one was also sort of deceptive. And then, when the player spawns, I also set the enemy array to be empty, instead of only setting it at initial load time. So now I die, enemies disappear, new ones spawn, so I don't get stuck in a fight against the same batch of enemies over and over hovering at the bottom of the screen. Then I'm thinking jump cancel. If I let go of W in midair while my velocity is in a certain range, then I should stop jumping. I should set my Y velocity back to 0 instead of continuing to move upward. That lets me do short hops instead of just big jumps. And that gives me a little more control over my vertical movement, which is a good thing. But it's not enough control. So I'm thinking double jump. I add this player.has second jump when you make your first jump. And I realize if I'm holding a key, that's different from pressing a key, and now that's going to matter. So I'm making this keys fresh array instead of just keys held, and I'll have to hook that up to start working. So on key down, I set the fresh, but instead of clearing it on key up, I'm going to clear that at the end of every frame. So I see if I've gotten a fresh press since I did my last frame. And I set it so the jumping and the ducking through a platform cues off that. And then I have to actually remember to initialize keys fresh in the first place. That was why I had those bugs. And now I'm just flying into the air because my double jump didn't have an if. Oh, no, it was because my double jump wasn't clearing the second jump. That's right, the if was later. Right. And then I'm saying so the fresh only happens when it actually is fresh and not when I'm still holding a key. Because sometimes you get a spurious key down just because the keyboard repeats keys. Then I have the else, so that the second jump only happens when I'm not making the first jump and I don't waste it by just doing both simultaneously. And then I'm just tweaking the velocities of these two jumps a little and trying out different numbers and reloading to see what feels like a good pair of jumps. And I fight some enemies with this pair of jumps and fiddle around, and I seem to be pretty content with it. So that's good. But then I realize if I step off a platform, I should still be able to double jump. So I'm changing the positive has second jump to a negative used second jump. So the default state is that I can double jump, and I only can't double jump if I double jump, instead of having to jump once to enable it. There are games you can walk off a platform and then do both of your jumps for the double jump, but I don't like that style. I like the double jump to just be one mid-air jump, which can be followed after either walking off or jumping off a platform. And I'm testing that out, and the game is less stupid than this in real time. It seems really jerky just because it's sped up. Keep that in mind. So then I realized I need a visual feedback about whether I'm double jumping or single jumping or what. So I go ahead and I make more copies of the placeholder player sprite, spamming different colors onto them. And I think about how I'm going to use it. As I need 3. One for on the platform, one for in midair with a jump, one for midair and already double jumped. Then I go ahead and do some if statements that set the player's texture left position, the X on this sprite sheet, based on some parameters. And I get that wrong a couple times before I get it right. So there we go. Those colors now indicate whether I'm in midair, and if I am in midair, whether I can double jump. And then I realize my attacks are frustratingly hard to hit with because they're the same width as the player. And I actually want them to be longer. So I go in the sprite sheet, make the sprite sheet longer in that spot, make bigger attacks there. Then in player hit sprite, the thing that I'm using both for the drawing and the collision detection, I change it from returning the object it had to an object that I'm going in and setting its values based on the new geometry that I want. And that fails for some mysterious reason. It's not working. Why is it not working? I run around trying to attack and not attacking, and I have to think about it. And eventually I realize I just made a simple syntax error, and instead of setting the x-coordinate of the object, I was returning the x-coordinate instead of returning the object. And also, while I was doing that, I noticed pressing left and right scrolled the screen, which was annoying. So I'm just saying, for these keystrokes, if I'm not holding down shift at the same time, prevent default, which is how you tell the browser that I want to ignore this particular event as far as automatic browser behavior goes. I just test that out, making sure it actually is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And the screen is not scrolling, so that's good. I can now use the arrow keys without worrying about their default scroll bar behavior. Silly little thing to distract me. And then I want to attack up. So attack facing was just a number, 1 for right or -1 for left. But now I want it to be able to attack up too. So I'm going everywhere that attack facing was in, and changing that to now be using switch themes instead of numeric computations. So I'm going to have 3 different weapon angles instead of 2. And to do that, of course, I need to update my get player hit sprite code to have that third case built in there. So for each of the possible positions, I know where it wants to be relative to the player, and I set its coordinate relative to the player accordingly. And of course, to do that, I will need a third graphic, which I can just scribble in GIMP arbitrarily, getting it to the right size. Good enough. So now I have those coordinates, and now I have 3 different attack directions. And everywhere else there was a number. I have to just go in and make sure I'm always using it as the string, not the number. As you see, I can now attack in 3 directions. I actually got the left and right coordinates backwards, so it was showing the wrong thing. And arrow up is now in the list of things I care about to not scroll with. So there we go. I'm now using a bigger attack without having to have changed too much code to make it bigger. And I have this extra attack direction. If I want to add a down attack, that would follow logically, but it doesn't fit the idea of what I want, really. Up is important, though, because enemies are coming from above. Now, the next thing here is that I realized I wanted the difficulty level to roll back a little between lives instead of continuing at the same difficulty we're at and getting demoralized by it. So there's 2 variables, player.score, which only sets at the start of the game, and player.score this life, which just resets to 0 every time you lose a life. The enemy speeds are determined by your total score, but the number of enemies on the screen goes up with your score of this life. So after you die, you'll get new enemies at the same speed, but just fighting one at a time at first. And to support that, I lowered the thresholds of what score spawns how many enemies, so they would ramp up reasonably quickly. And then I'm testing that out for a little while. After that, I just add it so when you get hit, you get bumped a little bit upward instead of stopping your velocity to dead 0, because I figured the arc where you fall off the screen looks better that way. And here I am just leaving notes for myself about what other things need to be done. And in a next video, I come back from the bathroom and work on some of these things. I will be posting that video when that video is dubbed. I'll see you then. Bye. Oh, one more thing. I changed it so instead of having a specific list of keystrokes that I would prevent default on, I'm just preventing default on any keystroke unless it's modified with Shift. The Shift thing is mostly just so Control-Shift-K still works.